One chilly autumn evening, Mark decided to take a walk through the park to clear his mind. As he strolled through the park, lost in thought, he barely noticed the young woman who brushed past him. She was quick, her movements subtle, but Mark felt a slight tug at his coat. By the time he realized what had happened, she was already several steps ahead, clutching his wallet in her small, trembling hands. Mark's first instinct was to chase after her, but something about the girl made him pause. She was small and frail, her clothes worn, and her hair hung in messy, tangled strands around her face. She looked back at him, her wide brown eyes filled with fear, and for a moment, Mark was struck by the depth of emotion in them, something he hadn't seen in anyone for a long time. Instead of anger, Mark felt an unexpected wave of compassion. He called out to her, "Wait! Stop!" The girl froze, her eyes darting around as if looking for an escape, but there was none. Mark approached her slowly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said gently. "I just want to talk." She hesitated, clearly not trusting him, but something in his voice made her stay. I'm sorry," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't mean to." "It's okay," Mark interrupted softly. "What's your name?" The girl hesitated before answering. "Sally." "Sally," Mark repeated, the name rolling off his tongue like a delicate melody. "Why did you take my wallet?" "Sally," tears welled up in her eyes as she clutched the wallet to her chest. "I didn't have a choice. I'm hungry, and I needed money to eat." Mark's heart ached at her words. In his world, he had never known such desperation. He reached out and gently took her hand, surprising her with his kindness. "Come with me," he said. "I'll help you." Sally looked at him in disbelief. She had expected anger, maybe even a call to the police, but not this. "Why would you help me?" "Because everyone deserves a chance," Mark replied with a warm smile. "Let me take you somewhere safe." Mark took Sally to a nearby diner, where they sat in a quiet corner. He ordered a meal for her, and as she ate ravenously, he watched her with a mix of curiosity and sadness. She was so different from anyone he had ever known, her life a stark contrast to his own. Over the meal, Sally began to open up, telling Mark about her life. She had grown up in a small town, but after her parents died, she had come to the city in search of a better life. But the city had been unforgiving, and without money or connections, she had quickly found herself on the streets, struggling to survive. Mark Harthlow, self-made millionaire, was known for his sharp business acumen and his wealth, which was only rivaled by his good looks. With his neatly combed dark hair, piercing gray eyes and his tall, athletic frame, Mark was the epitome of success. Yet, he was fascinated by this unusual girl. He listened to her intently, his heart breaking for her. He had always taken his wealth for granted, never truly understanding what it meant to have nothing. Sally's story stirred something deep within him. A desire to help her, to make a difference in her life. After the meal, Mark offered Sally a place to stay at his penthouse, but she refused, too proud to accept charity. Instead, they agreed that Mark would help her find a job and a safe place to live. He gave her some money to get by and promised to meet her the next day. Over the next few weeks, Mark helped Sally find a job at a small cafe and an apartment in a safe neighborhood. They began to spend more time together, meeting for coffee or a walk in the park. The more Mark got to know Sally, the more he admired her strength and resilience. Despite everything she had been through, she remained kind and hopeful. Sally, in turn, found herself drawn to Mark. He was different from the men she had met before, genuine, caring, and surprisingly humble for someone so wealthy. She found herself looking forward to their meetings, her heart skipping a beat whenever she saw him. One evening, after a long day, Mark invited Sally to his penthouse for dinner. She hesitated at first, but his insistence and the comfort of his company convinced her. The penthouse was everything she had imagined, luxurious and breathtakingly beautiful, with a view of the city that took her breath away. As they sat on the balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below, Mark turned to Sally, his expression serious. "Sally, I need to tell you something," he began, his voice soft but firm. Sally looked at him, her heart racing. "What is it?" I think I'm falling in love with you, Mark confessed, his eyes locking onto hers. I know we come from different worlds, but when I'm with you, none of that matters. You've shown me what it means to be truly alive. Sally's breath caught in her throat. She had felt something growing between them, but she had never dared to hope it could be love. Tears welled up in her eyes and she was silent. Sally struggled with her insecurities. She feared that she wasn't good enough for Mark, that their different worlds would eventually tear them apart. Mark's friend and personal assistant, Tom, was skeptical, warning him, "Be careful, my friend. She might be with you just for your money. You don't really know her." But Mark knew better. He had seen the real Sally, the girl who had stolen his wallet out of desperation, not greed, and who had captured his heart with her honesty and warmth. A few weeks later, Mark could not reach Sally. He went to her apartment twice but didn't find her there. He went to her workplace and was told that Sally had not shown up for work in 3 days. She had vanished without a trace. Mark was devastated. He searched everywhere, but no one had seen or heard from her. Tom told Mark that Sally has been a dishonest person, and he was convinced that her disappearance confirms what he had always suspected. Mark refused to believe it. He couldn't reconcile the kind-hearted woman he had fallen in love with the image of a deceiver. Sally was in grave danger. She had been kidnapped by Master, the gang leader of the gang she had once been part of. After Sally's parents died while she was just a young teenager, she moved to the city in search of a better life but had ended up with a gang of thieves, led by a ruthless man named Master. He had made friends with her and promised her safety in exchange for her loyalty. For years, Sally helped the gang in their shady dealings, but deep inside, she longed for a different life, a life of honesty, love, and freedom. One evening, after a particularly dangerous job, Sally decided she'd had enough. She couldn't bear the guilt of stealing anymore, and the fear of Master's wrath loomed over her like a dark cloud. With nothing but the clothes on her back, she made a daring escape, running through the alleys and back streets until she was far away from the gang's hideout. She had lived on her own for 2 years but had struggled and stolen to feed until the day she took Mark's wallet. Master had been looking for Sally and finally found her when he went for a meeting and saw her having dinner with Mark. He followed them and knew where Sally lived, and seeing an opportunity to exploit Mark's wealth, he kidnapped her. They threatened her, demanding that she help them with one last job, or they would harm Mark. Terrified and desperate to protect the man she loved, Sally pretended to go along with the gang's demands. But deep down, she knew she couldn't betray Mark, no matter the cost. As the gang planned their heist, Sally managed to sneak a message to Mark, hidden in the simplest of ways, in a letter addressed to the cafe where she worked. The cafe called Mark and he went to receive the letter. Mark was shocked and terrified. He sprang into action, using all his resources to find Sally. Mark hired the best private investigators and security teams, and after hours of intense searching, they discovered the gang's hideout. With Tom's help, Mark alerted the authorities, who set up a trap for the gang. The police moved in, arresting all the gang members and rescuing Sally. Sally was finally safe. When Mark found her, she was shaken but relieved. She realized that Mark had risked everything to save her, proving his love was real and unconditional. In that moment, Sally knew that she loved him too, not because of his wealth, but because of his courage, kindness, and the way he saw her for who she truly was. When they returned home, Tom saw the lengths Mark had gone to for Sally. He understood then that their love was genuine. He apologized to Sally for doubting her, and she forgave him, knowing that he was only looking out for his friend. Sally and Mark's bond grew even stronger after the ordeal. They realized that love is not about where you come from or how much you have, but about the connection between two souls who care deeply for each other. Together, they built a life filled with love, trust, and happiness, far away from the shadows of the past.